Hey guys, this is Mrs. Mabelli and I'm going to quickly show you how to do the Golden Coqui Frog Lab. So this lab helps us to explore different impacts, long and short term, on an ecosystem and the effect that has on the organisms living there. Specifically, we're going to look at this little Golden Coqui frog. So remember, the problem is what are the question that we can answer by doing the lab. For this lab, the problem is what are some environmental pressures that can lead to extinction of a species such as the Golden Coqui frog. So we're going to look at some research that can help us understand a little more about what we're doing. There are different environmental pressures that can lead to the extinction of a species. Some of the pressures are short-term impacts. Remember, we talked about that during class. They last a short time and cause some of the organisms to die while others simply move away. Other pressures are long-term, meaning they affect the organism's DNA and cause either adaptation or entire species extinction. Okay? The Golden Coqui is a species of frog which is listed as critically endangered. It has not been observed since 1981. There are several environmental pressures that may have contributed to the loss of this species, including habitat loss due to deforestation, urbanization, and climate change. Well, look, all of those things are human caused, right? And didn't we say that human caused things are almost always going to be long-term change? And then it says other pressures that may have contributed are low reproduction rate and a fungal disease that I'm not going to try to pronounce that affects frogs. So now let's look at our hypotheses. So we have two. It says, if an environmental impact is short-term, then, well, what do we think will happen if it's short-term? Well, it kind of tells us up here. If it's short-term, some organisms will die and others will move. So some will move and some die. Okay? Then it says, if an environmental impact is long-term, then, well, it kind of tells us up here. Long-term affects an organism's DNA and causes either adaptation or extinction. Okay, so permanent change, right? So adaptation or extinction. And both of those things are going to be a permanent change, right? So they adapt, they've adapted. They're extinct. Well, that's really sad. Okay, so I'm not going to read the procedure line by line. I'm just going to tell you how to do it. So first of all, we're going to be playing a game. We're going to play the game with a population of Golden Coqui frogs. And we're going to start with 15 frogs at the beginning of every game. So we'll play the same game 3 times. And at the beginning, we're starting with 15 frogs in our rainforest. We're going to roll these dice, okay? So this is going to give us a little dice roller. We're going to roll those dice to decide what happened to the frogs every year, okay? Roll the dice, add them together. The population is either going to increase, decrease, or stay the same. So it'll either go up, go down, or not change, okay? And that's going to be based on what our dice say. So it says use the information in the game key to determine what the roll means. So if I roll here a 2, it says that they're going to reproduce plus 1. So I would add 1. If I roll a 3, they're going to continue living, no change in the population. So the population would stay the same. If I roll a 4, they're going to die from habitat destruction by environmental pollution or natural disaster. So those are short term, right? Because those things are short term. Natural disaster, remember we said there's only a few pollutions that are long term. So that's -1. Okay, so that's some examples of what that is going to happen. Then it says, after each roll, you add or subtract the frogs from your population. And then it says each roll of the dice represents 1 year in the rainforest. So every time you roll your dice, that's 1 year. You're adding and subtracting your frogs and putting them into the data table 1 on your sheet. So after this page, you have your key, and then you have the data page, okay? So this is your data table 1. Remember I said we're going to play the game 3 times. So there's trial 1, that's the first game. So you'll fill this out all the way across for trial 1. So you're going to roll 10 times for 10 years. Then you do the same thing, you start over, and you do the same thing again for trial 2. You're going to roll 10 times for 10 years, and then put your answer in here. Then you'll do the same thing for trial 3. You'll roll 10 times for 10 years and put your answers in there. Okay? So let's see how that works. So we're going to go over here. We're going to click on our dice and go to that website. Okay? It's going to bring this up. We only need 2 dice, so it should already be set at 2. But if it's not, you can use the drop down and change it to 2. Then it says roll the dice. Okay? So you roll the dice. I got a 1 and a 2. I'm going to add those together. So that's a 3. Okay? So now I'm going to go back over here to my page. 3 says continue living, no change. So that means for my first year, I'm still going to have 15. I continued living, there's no change. Okay? So now I'm going to roll again. And I have a 4 this time and a 3. So I got a 7. So now I'm going to go back over here to my key. It says for a 7, die from an exotic or introduced animal species. That is an invasive species, dude. That's long term. Okay, so it says -1. Okay, so I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to subtract 1 from 15. So now I'm at 14. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to roll again. This time, oh, I clicked it twice. Whatever. Okay, so I had a 5 and I have a 1. So that's 6. So now I go back to my key. 6, die from a natural predator. Okay, so that's short term because it's only 1 individual that died. So we're still subtracting 1. So we go to edit the text. And we're subtracting 1 from our 14 because that's what we had, and now we have 13. So I just continue rolling until I complete that whole thing, all the way to 10 years. Then I start over with 15 and I do it again. I do that 3 times, okay? After you've completed all this and your graph is filled out, then you fill out data table 2. So on data table 2, it says habitat is destroyed by environmental pollution. Environmental pollution is like natural pollution, right? So if it's natural, that's going to be short term. So right here in this box, you're either going to put long term or short term. See that? Long term or short term. Then in this box, you're going to put caused by man or caused by nature. Well, if it's environmental pollution, that's going to be caused by man. Oh, sorry guys. I think I said that was caused by nature, but that's not true. Environmental pollution is caused by man. But it's still short term because remember, there's only a very few pollutions that are long term, right? And if it doesn't specify radioactive pollution or something like that, I'm going to assume it's like chemical or oil spill. Okay, so that's going to be short term. It's going to be man. Then what do? Do they move? They die? They adapt. Okay, so you should have die in here pretty much every time, right? And the only question that you have is, are they moving or are they adapting? Well, if it's short term, they should be moving and die, right? So move and die. Okay, so then you would finish filling this out. Okay. So at this point, you would have both of these data tables done. And guys, don't just guess on this if you don't know. Go back and look at your notes. Most of this is going to be on your notes, okay? Then we have questions. So question 1 is going to be easy. This one, all you do is just talk about what happened during your first trial and your second trial and your third trial. So it says, explain the trial. How many frogs did you have left? Did it go up or down? What do you think would happen if we rolled more? Okay, so just explain all of that in these for the 3 trials. Then it says, explain the effects of a long-term impact on a species. Specifically discuss how the species might survive. Okay, so we know a couple of things could happen during a long-term change, right? We know that. So look in your notes. During a long-term change, what happens when the species survives? Then it says, explain the effects on a short term. Look in your notes, what happens during a short term, okay? Can a short-term impact cause adaptation? Why or why not? All of this is going to be in your notes, guys, all of it. What does generation time, lifespan have to do with adaptation? So in this one, I'm going to help you guys. So generation time or lifespan. Well, adaptation takes a long time, right? It's a long-term change. So that means that the lifespan of an animal can also cause it to either take a really long time to adapt or a really short time to adapt. Think back to the moths, right? The moths do not have a super long lifespan. They don't live very long. It's actually just about a month, right? So that means that they live many generations in just 1 year. So because moth lifespan is shorter, it's easier to see adaptation. It happens faster. Okay. Humans, on the other hand, we live almost 100 years now. So if we live for almost 100 years, it takes forever to see an adaptation in a human. Okay. So the lifespan or the length of time that it takes to adapt is gonna depend, or let's put will depend on the lifespan. And what that means is if the lifespan is short, it doesn't take that long to adapt. If the lifespan is long, it takes forever to adapt. Okay, then on your conclusion, you're going to say, was your hypothesis correct? Why or why not? Were there any errors? To get all the points here, you have to answer all 3 of those questions. So make sure you answer all 3 of the questions. Application, how does this apply to the real world? Guys, give me something. If you write, I don't know, I'm not going to give you any answer or any points, but if you guess, even if you're wrong, I'm going to give you some points. Okay, so that is your lab. I hope you guys enjoy it and have a good week.